The Canon R6 Mark II on paper is pretty close to my dream camera, and now that it's out, ooh baby, the pull to it is strong. However, I recently learned the hard way that while a camera may be amazing on paper, sometimes things aren't as good as they seem. The actual proof is in the pudding. What pudding? See, I'm the kind of person who falls in love easily, and I'm a sucker for specs. I fell in love with the first Canon R6 on paper, and I recently sold all my gear to buy it. But after a month or so, I quickly realized it wasn't good for my YouTube needs, so I sold it to get this Sony A7 IV. And this camera has been awesome. Yet, just when it started feeling like true love with the Sony A7 IV, Canon had to come along and drop the R6 Mark II like it's hot. That's still cool, right? And in doing so has erupted all sorts of feelings inside me. I figured since there might be others out there like me, right now deciding between these two cameras, I wanted to share some really important things I have realized to help make this decision easier for you. Let me also point out the obvious, these are insanely good full-frame mirrorless cameras that are forgiving to use yet difficult to master. With either of them, you can slap on a good lens, put it in aperture priority mode, and boom, you're gonna get sick quality right out of the camera. And then if you want, you can shoot log in 10-bit. I mean, there's just so much room to grow with these. And honestly, both cameras are overkill and probably way more than you need. But if you're like me, you're probably gonna get one anyway, so let's get you the right one. Let me get to the most important thing right away, the lenses. Now, I never realized the impact it actually has. Let me explain. Right now, I wanna get a 24mm f1.4 lens, okay? Sony makes a G Master version, which costs $1,800 plus tax. Ouch! Or I could get the Sigma 24 f1.4 for $1,100. I mean, ouch, but still much less ouch. It's nice to have that option. Let's say you buy the Canon R6 Mark II and you also want the 24mm f1.4 for your shot. Okay, similar to the Sony, it has an $1,800 version. Ouch. Oh, what's that? It's an EF mount and they don't have an RF version. So if you want a 24mm with an f1.4, you'd have to buy an EF lens, then get an RF adapter? Ew. I mean, if you're gonna start adapting lenses, then sure, it opens up more options, but then you're not reaping the full benefits of the RF mount. You're already making sacrifices on your shiny new camera. They just don't have the lens lineup yet. See, before I bought the Canon R6, people said the lens lineup was bad, but I thought, yeah, I don't need a million lenses. I didn't truly realize what lenses were actually available. Let me talk about the rest of the features. What I fell in love with on paper about the Canon R6 was the idea of 4K 60 with no crop, the better screen, the ergonomics, and most importantly, the Canon color science. And after buying and using it, sure, all of those things were nice, but they weren't that much better than the Sony. And I ended up missing a lot of the smaller features Sony has figured out that make life easier as a creator. And I eventually realized those little things make a big difference. Now, the R6 Mark II has refined where the R6 was weak, but to me, from the research I've done, it doesn't seem like they fixed all of the smaller details. So similar to the R6, it looks perfect on paper, but maybe not once you start using it. It's like relationships, right? Sure, it's great to be hot and heavy, but you know what else is nice? When your partner watches the kids so you can have a bath, or buys you your favorite nuts at Costco without you asking. And to me, that's what Sony has that Canon is missing. Sony buys you your favorite nuts. I think I'm starting to sound nuts. The draw for the Canon R6 Mark II for me as a video creator is similar to what it was the first time around. The 4K 60 no crop, the ergonomics, a much nicer screen, arguably better color science, and just general improvements across the board. It's shiny, it's new. I'm not gonna get technical in this video, but you know what I'm saying. One of my complaints about the original R6 was I was unable to customize the quick menu. On the R6 Mark II, you can. That's awesome. They also added custom video modes and the ability to shoot in aperture priority. Sick! Nicely done, Canon. Good listening. But you know what they didn't touch? The custom white balance setting. I actually use that so much. I don't know what they were thinking. Plus I see they kept the micro HDMI port too. Interesting. And I think the new sensor at 24 megapixels is fine. I will say when I switched from the 20 megapixel on the R6 to the 33 megapixel of the Sony, it was a noticeable jump. Honestly, I pretty much just use my camera for taking thumbnails, so I don't need giant high quality images, but the amount of detail I can crop into Well, 33 megapixel really seems like a nice spot. 24 megapixel is fine though. The Canon seems newer and better across the board, but it really comes back to the lenses and smaller details. Here's another lens example of something I didn't realize before I had bought the Canon R6. I purchased the RF 35mm f1.8. It was the only option for that focal length at a reasonable price. That lens had a beautiful image. However, the autofocus motor protruded the lens like a turtle's head. And because my teleprompter screws onto the lens, when I tried using this lens with my teleprompter, whenever the autofocus would hunt, the weight of the teleprompter would grind the motor. It was literally unusable. Sure, I could get a different teleprompter, but I didn't want to because the only other teleprompters out there are much bigger, rendering the little flippy screen useless. So then I'd have to get, say, a Glide Gear teleprompter and then a video monitor so I can see myself. Then I'd need to get a cage to fit all of that on the camera. And so now I'd have to spend an extra $1,000 on a clunky setup that's hardly portable. Yeah, no thanks. This Sony 35mm f1.8 lens, the autofocus motor is inside. My teleprompter works great on here. Look, I realize this example is pretty niche, and a lot of people out there won't have that problem. But my point is, it's those little issues you constantly run into with Canon, and you just don't get that with Sony. Sure, with Sony, there's a crop in 4K 60, but you can shoot in 4K 60 if you need to. And it turns out I rarely use 4K 60. And those little things like custom white balance, full-size HDMI, they make life a little better. On the Sony A7IV, the ergos are still nice, the screen is fine, and the menus aren't bad at all. And the color, well, how do these colors look to you? I don't even know what I'm doing. And you gotta keep in mind, I'm talking mostly about video here too, right? These are hybrid cameras, but the R6 One definitely felt like a photo first camera. I think Canon is on its way, but it's not quite there yet. Not when it comes to a video creator camera. I would love to get my hands on it and test it out because I think if your needs fall into exactly what they offer, you're gonna be really happy. As good as these cameras are, the most important thing is creating good content without being handicapped by our gear, right? The camera needs the right tools and features to help us tell our story. And when you're limited on the tools, or in my case, the lenses available, you are limited on how you can tell your story. For me, sticking with the Sony ecosystem allows more options to help me focus on my storytelling and to focus on growing my business. If I was buying right now from scratch, brand new, and didn't have a teleprompter, heck, I would be tempted to buy the Canon R6 Mark II. But you know what? Because it is missing the lens options and it is so new you won't be able to buy it used for a while, you're gonna be paying full price for the R6 Mark II, and you're gonna be waiting for the lenses that you want to come out because they're probably not out yet. And then you'll have to pay full price for those too. It's a lot of waiting and it's a lot of money. Or you can get yourself a used Sony with the exact glass you want, save thousands of dollars, and start creating right away with a company that feels as much of a video camera as it does a photo camera, a true hybrid. And hey, maybe you want a 20mm to 40mm f2.8 zoom lens. Yeah, you can get that for $1,000 with Sony. Sweet, how fun. I'm gonna stick with my Sony A7IV for the time being. We may not be hot and heavy anymore, but I can rely on it and it buys me nuts. I made a video which talks about why I think Sony is the champ when it comes to making YouTube videos. So if you are still on the fence about which system to invest in, watch that here. Otherwise, maybe check out this video next. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you are considering the Canon below in the comments and why. See you next time on The Sad Studio.